Be the Talk, episode 158, featuring Sarah Hillware. Welcome to Be the Talk. We go behind the talk 7 days a week for tips and techniques to help you change the world. I'm Nathan Eckel, and a talker myself. I'm interviewing others who change the world with their talk. You can too, even if you've never given a talk before. Let's get started with today's show. We are live with Sarah Hillware. Sarah, are you ready to talk?
I am. Thanks, Nathan, for having me.
Sarah Hillware founded Girls Health Ed, which provides comprehensive health education to girls and young women with the goal of helping them make empowered, lifelong decisions. Girls Health Ed's school-based program currently operates in several areas throughout the United States, as well as in 2 areas in Kenya. The organization has reached over 2,000 girls and young women to date. Sarah Hillware, welcome to the talk.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to join you.
Well, I really appreciate what you're doing, not just in the United States, but also in Africa. There's a absolute need for what the message of your talk is, which is called Teaching Our Girls the Truth. This is one of those types of talks where it really comes out of the fruit of your life, your own experiences growing up. You cover a whole wide range of things, including body shaming and growing up and you know, just the need that girls have to have really be taught confidence, be taught these skills of how to think and how to become literally comfortable in their own skin so that they can go out like you have done and make an impact. And you just take us behind the talk.
Absolutely. So, I actually founded Girls Health Ed for 2 reasons. One was because of my experiences growing up. I grew up in a situation where we had a domestic violence issue, and my stepfather was a Vietnam War veteran, and he actually suffered from terrible PTSD, and eventually became an alcoholic, and then was addicted to pain medications. And so that really led to kind of a turbulent home life. And really that was around the time where I was going through puberty. I was discovering who I was. I was growing into the person that I would eventually become later in life. But during that time, I realized that my confidence was really not where it should have been. I had a stuttering problem. I had trouble in class when there were things going on at home. And then I also realized that, because of the self-esteem issues that I was having, one that came about with puberty, because many girls actually go through this in puberty where once they hit that phase in their lives, they actually become insecure because of a lack of information and sensitization around puberty and the changes that occur in one's body. So you're already kind of comparing yourself to other girls and their bodies and what puberty is like for them. But really because of the whole culture, the taboo around not talking about menstruation, not talking about reproductive health, not talking about sexuality. Girls are withdrawing from things that they love. So 60% of girls actually withdraw from sports once they hit puberty. And obviously that's due to a lack of self-confidence, self-esteem. So back to me and my story, I found that I was kind of hit with a double whammy, right? So I was going through puberty, and then I also had this turbulent home life. And I felt that I didn't really have a lot of mentors, a lot of people to turn to. Eventually, I actually, really confided in an aunt, who ended up giving me a book. It was a book on puberty by an American girl called The Body Book. And that book really helped me understand what my body was going through, really kind of gave me, sort of an information source. And I was able to talk to my aunt about it. I also had a mentor in school who I was able to talk to about it, and also kind of share things that were going on in my home life. But I realized that a lot of girls didn't have that. They didn't have a resource. They didn't have mentors. And oftentimes when, girls are going through these changes, especially when they don't have a supportive home life, they can drop out, and even if, that worst case scenario doesn't occur, a lot of them are falling behind in classes, right? So they're keeping quiet, they're not raising their hands, or they're missing days out of the month, from menstruation. Sometimes also with the emotional and hormonal changes that come along with puberty can lead to depression and things like that. So that's one reason I founded Girls Health Ed, was because of my personal experience that I had growing up, which I talk about in teaching girls the truth. The other part of that is that building off of those experiences, I was inspired to write a thesis on the connection between adolescent girls' health and educational outcomes. So I actually ended up doing a study where I compared different areas throughout the world. So one in Kenya, one in India, and then also one in urban U.S. and one in rural U.S. And across the board, I found that girls, were lacking information on their bodies. And there were a few common areas where, you found no matter where a girl was, no matter, what her background was, she was actually not exposed to certain information. Even in the United States, only 13 states mandate health education to be medically accurate. And across the world, I mean, we're seeing similar circumstances. And this is exacerbated when girls are in extreme poverty. When they have young mothers who may not have gotten this information themselves. And then oftentimes when they have a lack of access to resources, even outside of the information. So, for example, menstrual products. We're finding in Kenya that girls are not able to afford menstrual products, and so therefore they don't go to school during their periods, which can lead to a lot of missed classes, which can lead to dropping out. So when I was doing this thesis, I was uncovering all of this, and it just made me really angry, really enraged, and I felt like that, I really had to do something about it. So after this thesis, I actually applied for a small research grant from my university, George Washington University in D.C., and ended up doing a pilot just in the area. So with some girls in D.C., most of them who were low income and on free lunch programs through D.C. public schools, and really found out a lot doing this pilot. I found out that some of these girls had never had any health education, no comprehensive sexuality education. Some of them had never been exposed to any of this. And it was just really, really kind of eye-opening, because when they did receive the initial workshops from me, at the time it was just me doing this pilot, doing this research. We found that they became a lot more confident. We found that they were a lot more excited about engaging with this topic, and we also found that a lot of these girls, they ended up disclosing other information about things that were going on outside of school, so in their home lives. Because we're using, puberty and we're using these 5 modules of nutrition, physical fitness, personal care and hygiene, reproductive health, and healthy relationships as an entry point, to kind of uncover a lot of other things that are holding girls back. So this pilot really led me to want to formalize my operations into an organization. And so fast forward, I ended up forming an organization, forming a board, and then was asked to give a TED Talk. And that TED Talk, really kind of allowed me to see that there were so many people who could relate to this experience, not just in the United States, but around the world. And then the year after that, so probably the same year, or within that same time frame that I gave that TED Talk, we were asked to expand our program to Kenya. And so by that time, we had kind of, something clicked within us that allowed us to say, wow, this is something that everyone needs. I mean, girls need it all over the world. So how can we make it scalable? And so that's where we are today. I mean, we're 6 years later. Girls Health Ed was founded in 2012. Back to your question, those are a couple of reasons I founded it. One, my own experience, and then two, was out of research, and just out of the discovery that this information was so sorely needed.
Sarah, I just love how you took from your own experience and your own challenges and your own firsthand life, day-to-day experience, and you went and you applied it. You got more resources and education, and then you discovered it happening around the world. And I love how you mentioned how angry you felt when you discovered that other girls on the other side of the planet were wrestling with some of the same feelings and issues that led you to go down this path and form this organization and help others out. That's part of the reason why we have this podcast, to really find the backstory. And we've been talking with, of course, Sarah Hillware. Her talk is called Teaching Our Girls the Truth. And in a moment, we will be right back with Sarah Hillware, because it's time for the Blitz Round. People ask, how could I start a 7-day-a-week podcast? It's because of what I've learned from my mentors. Some of the best mentors in history aren't around anymore. They've left hours of one-on-one mentoring behind in their books. Each month at Classics on Tap, I record a new chapter from a classic business book to help you make a difference. Download your first chapter at classicsontap.com. And we're back with Sarah Hillware. It is time for the Blitz Round. I'm going to ask Sarah a series of either-or questions related to the preparation as well as the performance of her recent 2 TEDx talks. Sarah, are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. First question. Were you selected to speak, or did you apply?
Well, I was selected to speak the first time around, and the second time around, they had already seen my first talk, and they had asked me to speak at another event.
2 out of 2.
So
I love it.
2 out of 2, very serendipitous.
All right. All right. Are you a memorizer, an improviser, or a blender?
I'd say a little bit of a blender. I did write out my first 2 talks. Like I said, the first one was actually really based on my thesis. So I essentially turned my thesis into a talk. And then I used some index cards and ended up, sort of improvising. So a little bit of a combination of the 2. And then the second talk, I wrote a brand new talk, but building off of the first one, and then I threw in a little bit of improvisation. So I'd say a combination of the 2. The first one a little bit more structured. The second one a little bit less structured, but still really more about bringing together a storyline.
Well, as opposed to a normal talk, this is more of a performance. So that said, did you have nerves, or were you in the zone, or neither, or both?
Well, the first talk I had a lot of nerves, and so I really felt that, that was really kind of not my best work, to be quite honest with you. And I would say that, I prepared as much as I possibly could, but there's nothing really like getting up there and realizing that, this talk, can kind of be really a starting point for something phenomenal. I mean, a lot of people use TEDx talks to launch things. They use it to, really kind of brand themselves. And so I did kind of feel that pressure. I did feel that weight. But, looking back on it, I realized that it was my first one. I realized that, it was also very early on in my career. And so in my career of speaking. So I really kind of was pretty nervous, and I think it's shown through. But I would say by my second one, the nerves really kind of tampered down. But at that point, it was really more about, overcoming sickness. So I think I told you, Nathan, that, so actually before that second talk, Teaching Our Girls the Truth, I had actually had a pretty high fever and laryngitis. So I actually lost my voice and couldn't speak at all the day before. So I was so excited to kind of finally have, okay, I've already done this. This is so great. I'm going to come on and I'm going to give this great talk and it's going to be phenomenal. And then I had this terrible bout of laryngitis, but I still pushed through and I still think that the talk went pretty well. So I'd say second time was a charm, despite the illness and setback.
We've been enjoying this Blitz round with Sarah Hillware, and she gave a recent TEDx talk called Teaching Our Girls the Truth. And if you want to see that talk, you can go over to a show notes page at bethetalk.com. We'll have a link to that talk that you can watch, as well as you can visit Sarah over at her website. It is girlshealthed.org. girlshealthed.org. And in a moment, we'll be right back with Sarah Hillware for the 15-second final word of advice. Everyone wants to change the world, but not everyone knows the first step. Before you can change the world with your talk, it has to be selected. So grab the templates, timelines, and tools that I use to get my talk selected at bethetalk.com. And we're back with Sarah Hillware. It's time for the final word of advice for Talk Universe.
All right. So I would say for anybody who would like to give a TED Talk, so I have two separate pieces of advice. So people who would like to give a TED Talk and don't know where to start. And then secondly, for people who've been asked to give a TED Talk and are scared out of their minds and have no idea how to prepare. So the first one I get questions for quite often. People say, how did you come to give a TED Talk? How did you get that opportunity? And like I told you, I was selected, but I have recommended friends and I have actually advised friends to go on the TEDx website to see the upcoming talks within that year. So I would actually say, and I would recommend to anybody who has an original idea, because TEDx is all about original ideas and they're all about really kind of making that stage come to life. So if you've got something that you want to talk about that you think no one else is talking about, or you think you're talking about it from a different perspective than most people usually talk about it, go on the TEDx website and apply for some of these talks. Apply to be a speaker. And before you do that, maybe attend some of the talks. But I would say that's probably the best way. That's the holy grail of finding out what's upcoming and where your content can fit in to the overall event. That second piece, is how to prepare. So I would say, for anybody who's looking to prepare for a TED Talk, the first thing that you can do is you can make sure that you're finding your most authentic voice. So making sure that you're connecting your talk to something that's personal and near and dear to you. That's what I did, obviously. But I think that's the most critical way that you can have an impactful talk. And then moving forward from there, finding your 3 to 5 key messages that you want to come through in that talk. And then really just practicing over and over and over again about your, with regard to your delivery. I actually had a speaking coach, for my first talk. And I found that helped quite a bit. But I would say if you kind of go through that initial process of really some self-reflection, and some organization in terms of what you really want to come out, because a TED Talk is really short. It's only 10 to 15 minutes. That really helps you, bring your talk to life and, make the most of that moment.
Sarah Hillware, thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Be the Talk. For tips and resources to help you change the world, go to bethetalk.com. See you tomorrow.